It is 5:15 p.m. We have everybody who is going to be here this evening here. And just for my town board members, because I've had some questions, we are being presented with these budgets, but these are all budgets that, even the last week's budget that we saw, if you have questions, if you want to see something changed, added, deleted, that is our purview to look at this and ask that. And if you don't ask them tonight, it doesn't mean that these folks walk away. They're still going to have, and that's the budget. We still will have some additional time to have conversations and get through the entire process and see everybody's proposals brought before us, and then we will have that opportunity to come back and have additional conversations. So that was a little bit unclear previously. I just want to make sure that's clear for everybody. And it looks like Mr. Moyer is going to lead us off this evening with operation and maintenance presentation on 2019 budget. So, Mr. Moyer.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Tonight we have 6 different presentations here of slides for various budgets. Our first one will be IT, and we have here with us this evening Corinne Millington. She is our IT manager. I'm not sure if you all have met her. You can come on up here. I'm going to turn it over to her to cover the IT portion of finance and IT, and then I will cover the finance part. So Corinne started with us last December, was it?
Yes.
Yes. So
Last when?
December.
Oh, almost a year.
Almost a year. Yes.
Good.
So with that, I'll let Corinne take it.
All right. Thank you, Dean. Good evening. I'm here to talk to you about the IT budget. And let's forward some slides so we can get to that. So I've been working in both the private and public sectors for, let's just say, a good amount of years. And what I've noticed over the last decade or so has been a growing concern about security and safety of information in the various environments that I've been in. And just to kind of highlight that is a top value of our citizens. And I'm not quite sure when they say safety, if they know and understand the safety of information, or if they're talking about the safety of themselves or their families while they're walking down the streets. But there's a relationship between all of that. And when we divulge information that to a bad person that they don't need to know, then that puts people in jeopardy of releasing sensitive information about them. So a lot of the budgetary items that I'm asking money for are related to issues about information security and also other security controls. So having things like cameras in really important places so that we can go back on that kind of information and try to find out if something did occur, when did it occur, and who may or may not have been involved. So I work very closely with a lot of the different departments to try to hammer out what are the top priorities that we really need to focus on, especially coming up on this next budgetary year. And a lot of it has to do with that. So not only physical safety of people, but also the information that we secure in the various places that we have it. Extending the network wirelessly. So right now, what we've talked about in the past, we've done a lot of fiber extension. And what we've worked on this year is finding a way to extend that in a different way, still secure, but not having to run and incur all the costs of running fiber out to the various areas. But we could do that securely via better technology. So there's some costs that we have to be able to do that as well, so that our people that work for us in remote areas that aren't sitting in the office can actually access our network information in a secure manner. So one of the big things that I'm asking for is to implement better authentication practices. So right now, what we do for our workers that work here, you just enter a password. And what we know and what we've known for quite some time is that that is one of the least secure methods for getting access into a network. It's easily discovered, it's easily hackable, and that's the way that many of these organizations are getting those ransomware attacks in their environments, is because they're just using a password authentication measure. So another initiative I'd like to try to do is to put something in place where we actually have what they call two-factor authentication, so that you have not just a password to get into the environment, but you have something on you that identifies you with that credential, so that there's no, it's not foolproof, but it's way better than what we have. There's actually an initiative out there by our own senator who's asking the Department of State to consider doing this same exact thing. It's long overdue in a lot of places, and they know it helps thwart thieves from getting information and access into some of the stuff that we have. So let's move on to the next slide. So in order to do that, there's some gaps that we have in our current IT workforce. There really has never been a security person, although we've done really good. I have a great team, and we've done some amazing things already in the area of security. We can understand, for instance, right now, that in the course of over a month, we have about 1 million hits coming into and going out of our environment every month. And of those hits, thousands of them are really bad things. But fortunately, we have some security protocols in place that prevent those kinds of hits from actually getting and infecting any of our assets. But there's a lot more that we need to do. And we need to understand what those kinds of hits are. We also need to understand what we're not catching. So there are things that do escape. There's things that get into our email, for instance, and we get people sending us, our employees sending us that kind of information. And just having somebody who can understand and prevent those kinds of things from occurring in our environment, it's the easiest way for somebody to get into an environment is by attacking a person, and that's the number one way that this happens, is by getting somebody to respond to something that's wrong, that's not good, and so we want to work and continue to work on preventing that from occurring. The security practices of these people are getting way more sophisticated. It's a growing concern amongst everywhere, every business and every government agency. So the security person, another help desk staff person to be able to answer the calls. We had an evaluation done this year, and that was identified as a weakness in our team. Our current staff is very busy handling the amount of calls that we get, and having another additional person is critical for the team, and also to allow them to have more time to focus on things that we also have to get done. Many projects that are backlogged that the departments have been asking for that we can't get to. We're also asking for an intern. This year we started a COE student, and next year I'm hoping that we have a better inventory in place, and we can actually employ an intern who can help us even further that investigation of our assets. We're asking to move the GIS technician that's currently part-time to full-time. When I break out the information between the GIS components of IT and the other IT areas, GIS is also struggling on trying to complete the number of requests that they have coming in. And so it's evidence that this is also a necessity. A big cost item for next year is Emergency Operations Center for PD. We initially looked at putting an Emergency Operations Center at the Public Works facility, but they don't have as much technology in that location, So it's more cost effective to put this into the police department. So what this would do would, we need to do it anyway. There's a lot that we're currently missing. The technology is outdated. We're at max capacity in our storage. The evidence files are very big and they're not gonna stop. And also our communications files are quite large. Any video type of activity like that, those produce extremely large file sizes, and we need to address that. So part of that initiative would address that issue as well. And we're continuously looking for ways to move some of our information to the cloud where it makes sense and where there's a vendor who is a leader, especially from a secure perspective. So one of the initiatives that we have for next year as well is to go to Office 365. Microsoft is well aware of the many security issues that we have, that every government agency and private industry has. So that's one of our goals, is to do that, to help secure that kind of information in our environment, and also for the police department to move their information out to a cloud provider as well. So those are some of the highlights of the budget, and
Question.
I will take questions.
Yeah, can you talk more about the Emergency Operations Center? You talked about storage of files and information. Is there anything else more emergency related?
What it will do right now, if something happens at town hall and we lose connectivity, the police department will not be able to work. They will not be able to access their files. They won't be able to make phone calls outside unless they had a cellular device. So they're pretty limited on what their capabilities are. What we want to do is make them fully enabled, so that if anything should ever happen here, that they would be able to do whatever they need to do to continue services fully.
So conversely, if something happens there, what do they do? Do they have a backup?
They can get services from here.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody can get services from here. But what we want to do is have a failover
Yeah.
capability, which we don't really have right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm sorry, where is there? Where
At
is-
the police department,
I'm sorry,
police department,
that's our backup?
they are not
Secondary.
right now. I want to make them have that capability. So should there ever be any event that should occur, they would have either capability there through the police department or a service run through us, which is what they currently have.
I think you might be. Are you asking where do we back up our network now?
No, I'm assuming, at least when I've heard this kind of discussion, it's usually there is a remote location that is really a redundant place of operations.
Yes.
If anything happened to town hall, you could go there and run the town from there.
We don't have that.
We don't, okay.
I'm asking to do that.
We need a bunker.
Yes,
And that's in the budget?
that's
Or
what I'm
in
asking
phase
for.
one of
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, that's a big chunk. That's why there was a significant increase.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue.
What would you say, I'm sorry, Tom.
No, you go.
What would you say is the sensitive data that we hold? Do we have citizens'
yes.
social security numbers, private information, personal information, et cetera?
We have business information, we have private information, we handle all the water accounts for all the citizens. So we have any information related to that, their banking information, their credit cards, or other information, whatever they're giving us to pay for those services.
Wow, this is pretty important.
Yeah.
The GIS Tech, you're requesting full-time, we had a request for that last work session. Is that the same person, or are we getting more GIS
No,
individuals?
it's just one person. We currently have a person here that is part-time.
Right.
We're asking for him to go full-time next
Yeah,
year.
Mr. Jones, so staff presented the overview for every department, and then this is just the detail. So the one that I presented, this is just the detail for that presentation.
Okay, thanks.
So at some point in this presentation, is somebody gonna come back up with the numbers of what all this means? Or we have to go back to last week's work session to determine the numbers again?
The IT budget detail is on page 73 and 74
Right.
in your budget. So, yeah, I think this is just what Corinne's just kind of going over the overview
Okay.
of the things that are different from previous years and things that are kind of driving the cost into this budget. But we can certainly, Mayor, talk about any of the specific
But
questions.
it would be helpful when we're talking about these things too, if the breakdown could kind of be there. I mean, I recognize this full budget, I mean, and obviously, I mean, I think that's why we're seeing like almost a $1.1 million increase.
Mhm.
Is that
Well,
in this department? But it outlines all these different things,
Mhm.
which, yeah,
Yeah, if there were cost estimates next to what these
I see,
projects are.
just in the presentation, just like the round numbers, what that would be.
I think so. I mean, for me, it would be, so like,
gotta look back
if
and
we're
forth.
saying, you know,
Yeah.
we want this staff additions for security, how much is this additional security gonna cost us? Versus, and then, you know, how much is part-time, I mean, in any presentation that we're getting, or even if I know you already went to the trouble to create this, or then just point out in this where all these things are. So we know the breakdown.
I can give that to you if you want.
So we
like-
know the breakdown. And I don't know, it might not be that, maybe the other board members are.
Right, and so in
interested.
here, if you look on page 74 of your budget, oh, I'm sorry, no, you don't have that information. My apologies, so that's just in my detail. So the EOC and data center upgrade, we have $200,000 estimated for that. For the security access control that Corinne brought up earlier with it, which is like kind of the redundant login, that's $60,000. Let's see, security.
What line item were you at?
And so that's all, it's all under the machinery and equipment. Or I'm sorry, no, the operating, yeah, so these are just the, like, up there when we talk about emergency operations center, we're estimating that at $200,000 to do that. The GIS Tech, and Dean, jump in if you have any of the details on the personnel, let me jump on that.
And we don't need to take the time, I think,
Okay.
to do this tonight, but I think as we make decisions what we want to do with the budget, it would be helpful, I think, in all these instances where we have these requests from all departments, there is a matching number that we can that is equivalent to the request.
Okay, so that makes perfect sense. So what we'll do is we'll get, for all these from this presentation tonight, we'll get those details down and email those back out to the board.
I have a question, Dion. When you mentioned 200,000 for this EOC, why is that not in the capital improvement? Is it because this is a separate
is.
fund, or is it in the capital?
It is.
It is,
Oh, so it's
but
not in the-
we eventually, when we write the check, we will record it out of this fund.
Okay.
We have a transfer coming into this fund from the capital improvement to pay for this.
Okay.
And those were covered in the capital improvement presentation
So now I may be a little confused, because are we actually gonna build our separate emergency operations center?
No. That's not a bad idea to consider for the future.
Well, there's
The
company-
bunker.
But there are
But I'm not
companies
doing that
offer
right now
sort
because
of-
it's just not feasible. And within our boundaries, it would be really hard. The actual recommendation is a 5-mile radius between 2 different locations. That's what they recommend. We don't have that right now. That would mean we'd have to build a whole new building and so forth. Now, if that's something that we want to think about to try to work towards or do some kind of joint effort in the future, I would love to be able to do something like that where we could save money by collaborating with like Larimer County, for instance, or doing something like that where we could actually leverage the same building and have some kind of solution that we could jointly work out. But for now, we don't have an option and we need to do something.
I know at Frontier Airlines and airlines operations and flight controls and everything that are in the mainframe, there was a third-party provider. There was a company that had all the infrastructure servers for a fee. You could put all your software and systems on it, and it would be the emergency backup center. It was, oh gosh, I think it was 200 miles away.
Yeah. You can also do that too. We've talked about that. That would be a significant cost to have a complete failover system in a location that we could even, geographically separate so that you don't have to worry about the same kind of natural disasters or something like that. But that is a much
More costly than.
yeah. And this would give us so much more functionality for what we don't have here. And we wouldn't have that if we did a failover site where you just pay somebody to have that service so that you could fail over to it. You can't use them for the things that we're trying to use this for as well. We need to increase our storage. We need to have a site like that close enough so that we can replicate data and we can have that in the immediate area network. That's also a necessity. Trying to access a video file over a long range would be really challenging.
Yeah, it's pretty critical. I mean, you
Yeah.
could identify the critical functions that would need to continue during a disaster scenario. It wouldn't be all of them. I'm sure people wouldn't mind if we couldn't collect taxes.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Just tie across the numbers.
Sure.
Any other questions for me?
I don't think so.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will take a couple of minutes here and speak about the finance expenditures. And as you can see, my experiment with no shave for October did not last very long. Rocky's got bounced, so I started shaving again.
I'm sorry, Dean, maybe before you start, Shane, what page is the finance on the spreadsheet?
Six. Number 6.
Page 6?
6.
Oh, oh, look at you all up front.
Huh?
Look at you all up front. They're on page 73 and,
Oh.
Yeah, the IT is a special fund, so it was further down in the budget than the finance is just general fund.
so on this spreadsheet,
Yeah.
finance, page 6.
Yeah.
Right. Go to. Whoops.
You got it? All right, so as far as the relationship to the strategic plan, I looked at our strategic plan and I realized that while not any one is specifically set up for the finance function, eventually we are involved in all of the priorities. At some point, it's all going to require money, and that's where we come in, here in the finance department. What I have going for 2019 is we are not adding any new personnel. We are reclassifying our payroll and accounting coordinator to the accounting specialist. It won't cost us very much, as you can see, roughly $1,100, but we feel that, I mean, that's before our salary survey comes out, but it won't cost us very much. It's simply a reclassification of a position in the department. A couple things. I realized today that I looked at my budget, and the biggest things in my budget are basically to pay somebody else to do things for us. A new presentation I did here is, in years past, we always got charged, people always charged us a fee for investing our money. Most of them they just report us the net interest, and they don't really send us a bill for investment fees. We have 2 outfits that we use that send us a bill for investment fees. The auditors, requested that for those that we get billed quarterly, we show it as on a different line item. So this year, you can see there's an item for $60,000 there that had not appeared in the other ones. I was thinking before I sent this out, I wanted to go back to the prior years and pull that number out, but as you can see, I forgot to do that. So anyway, I thought the question may come up, what do we make in investment returns each year? And this is also an exercise we have to do for the audit, but I figured since we did it for 2017, I would share it with you. As far as interest earnings and dividends and such, in 2017, we made $767,000. So that, we have quite a bit of money working for us, and it's, you know, an extra source of income that doesn't require a whole lot of output on our part.
But am I following you correctly? We pay $60,000 to somebody outside of your finance department to manage that asset?
Well, what we do is I basically manage it, but I don't have a securities license or anything like that. So we have several government investment pools. I have a bunch of brokers that I do business with, and you know, when they do a trade for us, there's always a fee on it, you know. So.
And so this 60,000 is kind of based on what you are guessing we've been paying.
Yes.
In a year's time.
Yes.
To manage.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, if we have money to invest, I call them, they go and buy it for me and, you know, keep it in our account there. But I have to do it that way because I don't have a securities license.
Right.
So.
But Dean, do I understand correctly that 60 was simply buried in another number somewhere last year?
Yeah, we used to net it against the investment income.
Okay.
But
Got it.
like I said, the auditor requested that we break it out separately.
So investment income next year should pop up
Yes.
by 60, but then you're, well, or more. But they're going to have an expense then below the line.
Mhm.
I had the same question. You're gonna gross up the interest and then take out the fees.
Yeah, this is, the 60,000 is an estimate from the quarterly bills that we received. You know, in years past, we just netted it against the interest income.
So are there some accounts or brokers that net it?
Yes.
And you're gonna continue that, or are you gonna gross that up and back?
For now, I'm gonna continue that.
Okay, so
'Cause
we're paying more than 60,000 in
Yes,
fees?
we are.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
In the wrong business?
Hmm?
You're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
Well, one of those new investment pools we just signed up, we approved like within the last year.
Yes.
Wasn't that for like $500,000 or something?
Yeah, that was a new government investment pool. And I think by now I think we bumped that up to 2 million now. So we have a variety of things. We have a lot of government paper, federal government paper. We have a truckload of CDs, you know, all of them under 250,000. Government investment pools, that kind of thing. All really, nothing flashy because we're just plain not allowed. You know, we can't lose the money. So,
What would you say average interest has been since the Great Recession or last 10 years or?
I think now, well, it got ridiculously low there for a while. For a while there, those government investment pools were paying less than 1%. And so we started branching out into actually owning the government agency paper, like Fannie Mae and that kind of thing. And it started to climb, you know, a little bit to where now I think our weighted average portfolio is just shy of 2%. You know, still not great, but that's the environment we're in. Here recently, we're able to get stuff there's a couple pieces that we have that are closer to 3%. You know, just this past year, the stuff that is available has been carrying a better interest rate. So, but still, you know, still not that great. You know, I remember in the days we were making 6 or 8% and that kind of thing. So that was a while ago.
I hear there's these great new things called CDOs that can guarantee you 25% return.
I'm probably sure we're not allowed to do that.
Collateral.
Was that a robocall?
Okay, also in my budget here, I added, well, we had some money for sales and use tax audits in the past. I made it a little higher this year, and the reason I did that is because we had a home builder, a large home builder. This program has always been available to people, but in the whole time that I've been here, this was the second request I've seen about this. When they get a building permit, we estimate the cost and what the use tax will be. They, being whoever buys the permit, has the right to come back and say, it didn't cost me this much, I want a refund. We had one of those this year, and I suspect that we are getting a lot of the bigger national home builders here, and there's a person in Denver that has carved out a niche in specializing in that kind of thing. So I'm figuring that we're gonna see a lot more of that type of thing. So I added some money for more sales and use tax audits this year.
And Dean, we may want to think about limiting how long we can actually have an audit come back as
Yes.
well.
We are working on that, we being me and Cheryl and Debbie, working on that with Kim. That'll probably be before y'all. What he means by that is, in our current code, it says that they can come back 3 years after the permit is done. I think what in Grand Lake you had like a month or something?
No, I think we gave 12 months,
12
6 or
months.
12, but I just think that's a long liability to carry on the books is knowing that, you know, use tax you've collected 36 months later, somebody could come back and say I've overpaid. It's just, it's too long. So I think, yeah, we're gonna do some research, but maybe more like 12 months. Certainly if somebody's overpaid their taxes, they have every right to come back and say I've overpaid and give them back. But I think we wanna limit that liability to something a little bit more reasonable.
They always bring corroborating evidence, that bring the receipts and everything else to
That's
what- prove it.
That's what we have a contract with, it's called Revenue Recovery Group. We contract our sales tax audits through them. This particular builder brought in, it was a list of, I don't know how many permits. And I said, I don't have the manpower to go through that whole stack and see if it's right. So fortunately, RRG does those kind of audits as well. So I contracted with them. And I mean, that one alone was like $7,500 or something like that. Yeah, so hence the line item. The other stuff is their larger items are in there, but we do those every year. Obviously, we have to have an annual audit by our outside auditors. We are in this coming year will be the second year of 5 that we went out to bid in 2017 was the first audit covered. I think we did it in late 2016. We went out to bid for auditors. We ended up staying with the same auditor. They gave us a price for the next 5 years. This next year will be $40,750. So they will be here probably a week in December and 2 weeks in March and early April to give us all a headache, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then the last item was the county treasurer fees. Those are fees that the county treasurer, he keeps a portion of. It's like a collection fee for us. He collects people's property taxes and keeps a percentage of it rather than us doing it ourselves. I have 80,000 in there. That's about what it will be this year. So those are my biggest items. So, short of any questions, I will, did you have any questions
Any questions for
before we
Dean?
move on?
A question, but Madam Mayor, I'm wondering, based on the conversation, I think, at least I'm looking at that investment strategy, and I get what's going on here, but I'm wondering if somewhere during the year we could have a work session just focusing on the investment strategies that we're taking and the fees and costs and what we're doing.
Okay.
Some of you may know,
Can you make
but-
note of that, Mr.?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Jones, did you have something else?
I mean,
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Before Sosnowski.
Next up will be Mr. Ballstat with the Planning Department.
Thank you, Dean.
And what page is he on in the budget?
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got my notes here. Page 10.
Page 10. Thank you.
So like Dean said, planning is also a department that touches most everything that we, all the goals and policy, or initiatives in the strategic plan. So I concentrated primarily on the big changes in this year's budget, and they are pertaining to roads and traffic and the priorities and initiatives in the strategic plan. Obviously, look to the road improvement plan priorities and multimodal transportation plan. We talked about the multimodal transportation plan at the CIP work session, so I don't have the slide on that, but there is a related item that I'll cover here in a second. So the big changes for this year's budget, we did move the building permit technician from customer service into planning, primarily because that's issuance of building permits, enforcement of the building code, and it just makes sense under the planning department. And so with the changes that were made in customer services, that just, it's the same numbers, just rolled into planning's budget instead of customer service. And just one other note regarding the permit technician position, we're working on updates to the Safe Built agreement that will formalize the 2 days a week that they're providing us with building permit technician backup as part of their services, no additional cost. So that's something that will be reflected in the new agreement that comes before you later this year, but no impact on the budget. Staff development increases is a line item that increased, and that's primarily due to the mid-year reclassification of the planning techs to planner 1 positions. They hadn't been going to continuing education conferences or any other continuing education opportunities, so we increased that budget to send them to the planning conference or the Rocky Mountain Land Use Institute or one of those similar conferences in the next coming years. Board development, that line item actually went down a bit, and it's not intended to limit the planning commission opportunities to go to conferences. It's more to just accurately reflect the recent attendance trends. So I anticipate that the number that we have in there would cover anybody that wants to attend the state planning conference that as they have in the past. Want to take this opportunity to thank the board. Just went to the state planning conference last week along with Devin King, and we also had 4 planning commissioners at that conference, and they all seemed to think it was a great educational benefit. They're bringing back that experience to implement on the board. So the biggest changes in the planning budget for 2019 are contract services. This is the on-call planning services line item or under contract services that the board and staff have discussed several times. Being able to augment internal staff with some outside assistance, whether that be for development review, assistance with the code updates, and those types of things. We've identified the 2 firms, Baseline and Logan Simpson are the 2 firms that we've identified. The town attorney has prepared a draft agreement. I just haven't had a chance to review that agreement and get it to them yet. But these are where we have opportunities to allow the development community to either expedite a review or also areas of expertise that we may not have in-house. We can lean on them, say with the update of the sign code, that kind of thing. So we placed a number of $30,000 in the budget for that item, and it's that may or may not all get spent. It just depends on, as we work our way through the implementation of this, we're still kind of working through that.
Right, and I do want to point out to the board, we've also added an offsetting $15,000 revenue line item. It's been my understanding that there have been some developers that have said, geez, we want to pay for an outside firm, we want to go expedite it and get this done quicker, kind of speed to market, and that they'd be willing to pay for that service. And so again, this is our first year doing it. We don't really know how much we would spend or receive, but there is a $15,000 offset in the revenue as well. So I think 12 months from now, we'll have better numbers, but right now these are just kind of thinking that maybe half of what we receive may be offset by revenues.
And then similarly, we also have a $30,000 line item for on-call transportation planning engineering services. Similar to the last item, this would be for outside reviewer assistance, transportation specific. This doesn't show up in the planning line item for contract services. This is actually moved into the CIP budget, but we didn't discuss it at that work session because it hadn't moved there yet. So I just wanted to make sure that the board is aware of this. For instance, the Highway 392 and Larimer County Road 5 study that we had Felsberg, Holt, and Ullvig do earlier this year to try and identify what kind of lane configurations, restriping, light timing, all of those types of things. We would use this line item to cover those outside consulting fees for a project like that. We also had other projects like the Crossroads Roundabout at Rain Dance that, without having the transportation planning engineering expertise in-house, this would essentially be a contract service that would be something that we can draw on when those specific transportation issues arise. So very similar to the last item, contract services for expertise that we don't have in-house right now. And we probably couldn't justify at this time having an in-house transportation planner / engineer. So this is really kind of a interim until we get to that point, if we do in the future. With that, I guess I'd answer any questions. The contract services are really the big changes in the planning department budget.
Any questions? David?
You know, do you have any questions? I keep interrupting. So if I look at the line items from 2018 to 19, there's significant jumps, I guess, in the wages, the benefits lines. And is that all due to the transfer of the permit technician, or are there other staff adds?
That's the bulk of it. The permit technician was previously under customer service. It's now in planning, so that entire cost is, it's not a new person.
But there
Dean
has to
Vicky,
be
I
more,
think we
because it's
have-
149,000, it's almost 150
Yeah,
grand.
we also have, I believe, the Director of Community Development as part of the reorganization is also included in there.
So so you're already including the.
Well,
new
it's, yeah, because I
additional-
wanted it to be
Gotcha.
shown in here that the budget presented to the board included those positions, so yes,
Okay,
it's
so
in there.
that's the expectation of the addition,
With
the additional hire
reorganization.
for 2019. Got it.
That's right.
Okay,
And
I was
so-
wondering, I'm like, he only mentions this one person, and it's like almost
They're bigger.
150 grand.
Yeah, if that one person makes that
That makes
salary,
sense.
I want, can I get that job?
There were a
Not
couple of,
terrible.
and you'll recall with the reclassification of the two planning techs to planner ones, there was a small increase there as well. So.
Okay.
On the contract services, I get, absolutely get where you're going on that. It's interesting though, if I look at that line item over the years, it's like 116, 35, 161, 46 budgeted, but only 13 spent.
So,
And now,
I'm
there-
sorry.
is that all driven really by the volume of stuff you're seeing in a given year?
No, it's actually driven by the long-range planning projects that we farm out normally. So 3 years ago, or in 2016, we updated the comprehensive plan. So that was a 2-year project where we had a contract with Halsey Levine, and they did the comprehensive plan. I think that was for $115,000. Then the following year, we updated the roadway improvement plan and road impact fee ordinance, which was a contract for $70,000, I believe. And so we wrapped that project up last year. And then over the last 2 years, we've had the land use code update, which we actually severed that contract midway through the project, and we're finalizing that in-house. So this year now is obviously the transportation improvement plan, or the transportation improvement plan, which will build off of the roadway plan. So it's more of a multimodal plan, as you'll recall we discussed at the capital improvement work session.
You reminded me about the land use fee, right?
Yeah.
I think the contract termination had some issues, right? Wasn't there a claim?
The owner of the company is an attorney, and so we had said, no, thank you, we're keeping the rest of our money. They took 3-4 weeks to respond back and said, no, town, we want you to pay us the rest of the contract. And our attorney said, no, thank you, and so we haven't heard back from them. Is that pretty good?
Yeah,
Crystal clear.
So we're at a stalemate.
right. And
Well, they got 3 years, isn't it? Statute of limitations.
And with the code updates that we're processing right now, most of that work product is being produced by staff and not using the consultants.
But we may, back to the contract planning firms, we may determine, like, if we have this firm on, that we could outsource some of that work. You know, depending on our workload, maybe staff is gonna take on a project, maybe we can outsource the special work. Maybe staff can work on the special projects and we'll outsource some planning reviews. So we will have some opportunities. We get like the sign code and these different things that are fairly labor intensive to outsource or keep in-house.
Yeah, particularly things like the sign code with the recent court cases and things like that. We'll probably lean on them for some assistance in that code update, as well as maybe some of the more form-based code elements that we'd be looking at downtown. So I think,
So I appreciate that we've gone through this issue, and it's nobody's fault.
mhm.
But now, when is the timeline of when we will get completed? Just because now if we're just relying on when or if staff has time, or is this a priority because we want it done by such and such a time and date? So do we have a timeline?
It's a priority, and actually we're hoping to get something, the bulk of these, we're bringing them in stages to you, as you obviously know. Part of the challenge right now is obviously getting town board work session time. We've got the landscape code scheduled on the agenda for your consideration soon, and we're working on the sign code and the natural areas section of the code that would probably come before you late this year if we're able to get any work session time. Otherwise, it'd be the first of the year. But building on those, then we'll bite off the big one, which is zoning and subdivision regulations. That will probably be a multiple work session topic.
So are we looking late next year before we can get through all of?
We'd like,
What did they provide? It doesn't sound like we got through very much, but we still have the bulk of all that to do.
well, as we worked through the process, it was obvious that they weren't getting the streamlined code, the user-friendly code that we were hoping for. So we are having to redo
Go
a
back.
lot of what they were trying to push through. So, no, we are hoping to adopt sections of the code that are able to be standalone sections as we go.
Okay, so we
With-
can do that. We don't have to wait till the whole.
Right. We may have to do a reorganization ordinance at the end to bring them all together, but we would like to get things like the landscape code and those done as soon as, while they're fresh on the board's mind as well as staff's mind. But,
With the hopes that it would all be completed by when?
next fall, probably.
Next fall, okay.
Yeah.
She's writing that down,
Sure.
so.
No,
yeah.
I've got a Gantt chart with it, with a map
Oh,
to
you
that.
don't wanna see what she's writing down.
Scott promised.
Any other
Anything else for
questions?
Scott?
All right, thank you.
Okay, the town attorney's on page 9 of your budget.
Okay, all you gotta do is click. Okay. Good evening. My budget is very similar to last year's budget, which was very similar to the year before. What we have done is we've added some beef, if you will, to the litigation line item. We have a couple of eminent domain cases that are active, one that I'm handling and one that outside counsel is handling. That line item under contract legal services for the DDA eminent domain and the North Sewer Line eminent domain case, the North Sewer Line eminent domain case, we are reimbursed 2/3 of the total cost that we're billed. So the number that I show there is the full amount, not necessarily what the net will be. I also anticipate that in 2019, I may ask you to appoint the same firm to help me with a condemnation eminent domain case that is cooking along Larimer County Road 5. And so that budget, the litigation budget, is bigger this year because I anticipate we will see some litigation in 2019. The other figures that you see for contract legal services, particularly water, I expect those numbers to remain pretty flat. I don't expect them to go up significantly. You'll see that one is listed as a GLIC change of use case. That's the Greeley Loveland Irrigation Company litigation that we are actually doing for the benefit of a local developer who is reimbursing not only our legal costs, but our engineering costs. So even though I show a figure there, those figures are backfilled by a particular developer. That is also true for the line item that deals with Metro District Special Counsel. Most of the work that Carolyn Steffel does for us is on the Metropolitan District's dime. That process has slowed down a bit, but I know of at least one district that wants to request an amendment of their service plan. That will require Carolyn's involvement, but she bills those costs back. And what you don't see anywhere in my budget is that revenue to offset the expense. But some of those expenses, particularly the GLIC case and the Metro District Special Counsel, are offset by particular reimbursements. That is about all that I have on my budget.
Does this include the judge and the Missy Blouse fees?
No, that's under municipal court.
Hold on, in the municipal court.
Oh, I should scroll through my slides. Gee, well, how do I go next, right?
I was gonna be your slides, Ian.
Okay, see, I get flustered when it comes to numbers, as you know, and particularly when it's in the context of numbers in rows and columns. This is the time of year that Vicki Miller and I tend to ignore each other in the hallways here at town. But you can see the human power that is devoted to the office, and then also that increase generally of $66,000 is largely built around special counsel, water counsel, and reimbursements for Metropolitan District expenses. Anything else?
I don't see this broke out with the Metropolitan, I mean, unless I'm missing. I mean, I see it, something you broke out that says water, but am I missing? I don't see the the Metro District, there's not a specific.
There's not a line for Metro.
Maybe
Unless you're
That's true.
calling it something else.
Contract legal.
It's under the contract legal services is where it's been included, that part is
Okay,
For GLIC, yeah, but when we have the
I
special,
don't even have anything that
in the
says
Metro
GLIC.
District,
Do you guys?
that,
Not in
they,
the budget, but
We
So-
don't have the item that says GLIC either.
okay,
The-
yeah. So, yeah, the special counsel, and the Metro District Council, that's included under the contract legal services. So that's the
Oh, gotcha.
6253.
Correct.
And then, general water services are under the Water Attorney General Counsel. And, non-potable water attorney is for the Kern Council and non-pot. And then, we also have one called litigation. And,
Does that non-pot then deal with Kiker as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so line 6253-700, the GLIC case falls under that because that's, the direction is toward a source of treated water. That's how I broke it out. And similarly, any legal work that we need for the Bro reverse osmosis plant is also included in that line item. And as Shane pointed out, the litigation line 6253-600 is where I've plugged in a $30,000 figure for the North Sewer Line and the DDA litigation. So those are the line items that go with what I just talked about.
Thanks, Dee.
Any questions? Are we gonna have to add anything? I know Kim has been talking to Fort Collins about maybe adding into the court system, what do we call that?
It's alternative sentencing, I guess you could say.
Yeah, is there gonna be, I mean, is this accounting for that, or do we not know what that's gonna mean, or if it's gonna mean anything additional to the budget?
It's not necessarily going to change my office budget.
Okay.
It's possible that there could be a request, once that policy and that program takes shape the way you want it to, and the way the municipal court wants it to, I could see there being some need for administrative help, perhaps in the municipal court clerk's office. I'm not sure where that's going to come.
But that won't happen until sometime later in 2019, you're
That's-
guessing where they're at today?
That's right, that's what I'm thinking, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, so communications is on page A8. Got you all around. 8.
Okay, and then we'll turn it over to Ms. Hodling here to cover communications.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Town Board. Communication serves as an internal service to all of our departments and helping them fulfill their strategic plan priorities and communicating that out to the public. One thing we pay close attention to in our citizen survey is how residents get their source of news. One thing that is very concerning is that the newspaper has stopped printing regularly, so we're trying to think of ways next year to address that issue. And so looking at the other sources of news that our residents get their information is through our website and social media, or other ways. And so we're gonna look at ways in 2019 to address some of these issues. The budget has remained the same in the communications minus one line item, and that is for contract services. We included $25,000, and this will help with the website redesign, again, focusing on the ways that our residents engage with the town. Also looking at a newsletter that may go out quarterly, and this would be included in the town board's budget that we'll talk about next week. And so thinking about direct mailing that, but I'll touch on that next week for you guys. And then also contracting out large-scale graphic design projects, so that could be things like the annual report. Any questions about the communications budget?
I'm sorry, you said it was staying primarily the same?
Yes.
It's projecting 57 and it goes to 95? That's,
No, that's just a part of it, David. The bottom, you're looking at the internal transfers there.
got it, 257 to 368.
Yeah.
The adopted budget in 2018 was 298. The difference between the 2018 adopted budget and the 2019 adopted budget is about $40,000 of interfund transfers. So that's a big chunk, as well as the $25,000 for contract services. A year-to-year difference, I think, is in the personnel. We had some changeover in staff, so we had some vacancy savings, so it's not really an increase in the budget per se. It's just, we just are gonna spend less this year because we had vacancy for a while.
Okay, I see the IT transfer, significantly higher, 30,000, and then, okay, thanks, I got it.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
And in her rookie appearance with the town of Windsor, we have Ms. Butcher for HR,
And that's on page 7.
page A7.
Hi, good evening. I'm here to present the proposed 2019 Human Resource Department budget.
Shane,
Go ahead.
the page on that? Shane, do you have the page on that?
Yeah, page 7.
Thank
Seven?
you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The Human Resource Department is in line with the strategic plan of the town, attract the right types and numbers of people, develop the knowledge, skills, and abilities of employees, and retain our employees within the town's organization. Our focus is to ensure alignment around the town's vision, priorities, and missions as a solid foundation for strategy. Help leaders clearly identify the people components of the strategy, keep culture top of mind, keep employees engaged around the strategy and other changes ahead, creating and executing strategies and plans necessary to lead and communicate the town's vision, priorities, and mission, and excellent internal and external customer service in a fiscally responsible manner.
Make her look good, Dean.
Thank you.
Oh, that's quick. That's good.
You can leave it there. Yeah, I have it, this page in front of me, so that way we don't have to. The Human Resource Department is composed of staff members in an environment in which are indicative of a strong commitment to the town's vision, mission, and priorities. Some examples are communicating and supporting a culture of respect and trust. We do this by pay study reviews, consulting, employee engagement surveys, appreciation and acknowledgement, attracting and hiring the right individuals through recruitment, job fairs, networking, screening, and onboarding, facilitating opportunities for new learning and growth through employee development and training, online learning and training materials, dues, fees, and subscriptions, and contributing to job satisfaction with employee relations, safety, and again with the employee engagement survey. So the proposed HR budget has hardly any changes or additions for 2019. Some of them are employee relations, which is account 6209, which was increased by 2,500 with an emphasis on increasing employee engagement, communication, and appreciation. Employee development and training, account 5143, remained in the HR budget, which is for the Windsor Academy. Kelly Hodling is leading this program at this time, but her and I have been in discussion, and the goal and focus is to include the HR department as soon as possible with a mutual effort. The study review consultant 6267 account decreased, and that was due to the pay study review, which is every 2 years, will be completed by the end of 2018, therefore it's not in the 2019 budget, and that decreased by 26,000. And that's pretty much what I have for the proposed 2019 HR budget. Any questions?
So what is Windsor Academy? That's an internal in-house?
That's correct. So Windsor Academy, as far as I know, sounds like a great program. For example, in October, there's going to be a leadership learning challenges seminar. And I believe that the goal, and please Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong here, is to do training monthly.
So we started this about a year and a half ago, and it was to give all employees, no matter what line staff level you are, opportunities for programs like public speaking, leadership development, crucial conversations, and so this would be inclusive for all of our employees to engage them. It's been a very successful program so far, and we're going to continue to do it, assuming the board approves that line item in future years. And the way we do it is we have representatives from each department to talk about what are the needs that you're seeing and what gaps in training that you have, so we can include that moving forward.
And Kelly, could you
So it
tell me a
happens
little bit about
monthly?
like partnerships and like with Larimer and other local government agencies?
Sure. So one thing that we did this year, we haven't done in past years, is formed a partnership with Larimer County to provide a regional training for Larimer County employees in the town of Windsor. That'll be on the ranch on October 30th. We haven't done partnerships before. This is the first one that we've done. And it's not monthly, it's just based on the time of year. We try to do it in our slower seasons, which I don't think we have a slow season, but it's usually in January, February, early months, and then the tail end of the year, since so many of our employees are very busy during the summer.
Okay.
If you want to see what we've done in past years, I can send that to the board so you can see the types of training that our employees are getting. Would that be helpful?
So these aren't tied to your quarterly luncheons? Don't you have somebody who comes and usually tries to do some presentation at
Yeah,
those?
and
Is that part of this as well, or?
That is. So we piloted that to try to hit all employees at once. And so we brought in Neely Bott, who talked about customer service, and he came to our quarterly meeting. I'm not sure if the board came to that at that time, but that was one of the things that was included in Windsor Academy training.
So those quarterly speakers comes out of town manager or comes out of HR?
It used to be in the town manager's budget, and then we thought it was more appropriate for human resources budget, and so we're putting it back in HR.
So
Anything I
where
can
is
do
it?
to make
Is it
my
in the
budget less
current
small?
budget we're looking at?
It
Where is it identified?
Yeah, so it is identified, let's see, HR, it's under employee, development and training, and it's $30,000, and this year in 2018, it was budgeted at $25,000. So that's a requested increase of $5,000 for next year.
Above.
So it's
Budgeted 25,
line
projected.
5143.
Are we,
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask about something else.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to ask about, the merit pay line. 2015, 0, 2016, 0, 2017, 0, 2018, 6,038, projected to be 0 this year, and then next year, almost 15,000 bucks.
I can address that. We put those in there, we started showing the merit pay as a separate line item, so a couple of boards ago wanted to have that broken out separately. But what
Isn't
happened?
that in every budget across the board? And
Yeah.
is it 4% or 3%?
Right,
Is that
so
3%?
there's 7%
Just as
represented
a
here.
placeholder for right now, depending on the study, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so there's 4% for the wage study as a placeholder and 3% for merit. So that represents 7% of that wage right now.
Yeah, what seems odd is that in 18 it was budgeted, but it's projected 0. Sorry to tell you, but apparently, no,
It's rolled into the salary afterward. This budget is prepared prior to those merit increases, so we budget it as a separate line item. And then, like in 18 actual, you'll see it as the 5111 number.
They don't break it out at actual, it's actually buried into the salary number.
Yeah, so this is an estimated budget number. If everybody got the 3%, actually, after we go through all the evals, it's just built into the wages. So that's how the wages have increased every year, that merit increase is actually rolled up into the wages.
and then if that's true, I'd expect to see the projected wages go up by about $6,000, if nothing else.
Well, we had a vacancy for a while here in HR this year.
That's true, okay. Do we give an award to a department whose budget actually goes down year over year?
We
have
haven't
not.
yet.
Yeah. So far, I think you're in the lead.
Any other questions?
Okay, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Get out the people's mind for a
We
second.
got done, unless you have any further questions or concerns,
We are
We-
ahead of schedule.
we're ahead of
But
schedule.
we have, yeah, we do have future meetings, we can go through that a little bit, unless, does somebody else wanna have any other conversation or questions concerning budget? And that maybe not even pertaining to what we saw tonight, but last week, whatever, Mr. McCarter.
I have one thing that I didn't mention in my previous slides or my previous presentation. We did budget some money for special counsel to assist with rewriting our cable television franchise agreement, which is scheduled to expire sometime in 2020. So we'll work on that in 2019. I spoke with the firm that does this for everybody and was given numbers, so it's built into contract legal services somewhere. I just want to make sure you were aware of that, because probably sometime shortly after the first of the year, assuming this budget is approved, I will come before you and ask you to approve these special counsel.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from board members? Then let's look at future town board meetings. So next week, we have another budget meeting brought to us by, what departments are we gonna see next week?
The detail, Dean, do you remember?
Do we know?
Or Vicky? Oh,
Chair,
yeah, no, it's Public Works and it's Parks, Recs, and Culture again.
Yeah,
Parks, Rec, and
we have
Culture
Public
again?
Works, Park and Rec and Culture again.
Yeah, so
It's
he,
a gift that just keeps giving, Brian.
Yes.
Okay.
You notice we put them on the nights where we don't have to stop at 7.
right, well, right.
Eric
Okay.
can just keep talking.
And then and all these are at 5 o'clock again, so
Yes.
5 o'clock again on the 22nd, again.
Mhm.
Well, that's a fifth Monday, or
No, the 22nd is the 4th, and so
Okay.
it'll be all the other departments that you haven't heard
Haven't
from
heard.
yet.
Okay, gotcha.
Including a wrap up with the Capitol, and don't we have the Capitol wrap up on the 22nd as well? Yes.
Okay.
So we're gonna just kind of go through the Capitol again, and I know that we had
Any
the one night.
anticipated changes to the Capitol at this point?
I haven't been directed to change anything, so I think we would go through any updates that we had from staff, although off the top of my head, I don't remember any changes from what was presented a month ago.
No, I think possibly the only difference would be the Diamond Valley work that we
Well,
had
on the sewer line too.
in the original.
Right.
That's
right.
about $9 million. I would
Yeah,
hope that
so-
somehow or another that's been.
That's all I could think of.
Stuff that I've kept track of the changes since that meeting,
Okay.
so that you know.
That's why I like you, Vicky.
And then our town board regular meeting will be on the 22nd. 29th is tentative, depending on if board members want to meet. We already know Mr. Rennemeyer won't be here, potentially I may be gone as well, but that doesn't, we could still post a meeting or have a meeting if board members feel needed and necessary. November 5th,
I'm sorry,
town board
Mayor?
work session.
Sorry, Mayor.
Oh, yes.
On the 29th, will it be 5 o'clock if it's held again?
Well, I
Or are
think
we
since
open?
it's a
It's
fifth
open.
Monday, that could, yeah, I mean, it could be whatever time board
Yeah.
members who wanted to hold that meeting, could be 5:30, or 6.
That's right.
Depending how much you think you have to discuss, probably. So I would set the beginning
She looks
time.
at me.
She emphasized us.
Or not at all, that's right. November 5th, we'll come back to our regular scheduled board meeting times at 6 p.m. With a discussion on enforcement options for municipal court and looking at Crossroads Boulevard linkage to Highway 392. Is that the new discussion that we've been having with CDOT?
Yeah,
potentially,
I think
or-
it's just from staff. I think we had, after Mr. Olson came in and talked to the board, there's been so much discussion on what we're doing and questions about Crossroads. I've just asked engineering staff and planning staff to come and prepare and just kind of, I guess, discuss with the board how that could look with Crossroads and a little bit more pragmatic with the map. So,
Okay.
yeah, it is part and parcel with it, but it's not exactly what Mr. Olson drew on the map. I think it's just a little bit more internally saying.
But it's carrying on that,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
kind of, that conversation. Is one thing I'm gonna bring up tonight as part of my MPO, report, but 2018, so there's gonna be a call for project process that opens actually tomorrow, and it will close November 16th for funding in the 22 and 23 fiscal year, but as we all know, those potentially could move up if some other projects would fall through. So I just wanna make sure, and I don't know, I think they said Dennis, and I don't know if he's gonna be here tonight, but anyway, I don't know if this is a conversation that you, Dennis, and I have, but I wanna really look at this and the potential with some of these other conversations we've been having with the priorities that this board has set in terms of what we're looking at, prioritizing our, I guess, our roadway issues and things that we would like to see accomplished to mitigate some of the problems and issues we're hearing. If there are some ways that perhaps we could look at, is there a potential project on the list here that we could qualify for, or at least get in the queue to get some funding for something potentially?
Okay, well, I would say that if you wanted to just meet with Mr. Wagner and I, we'd obviously be happy to meet with you.
Because, yeah, I don't know where he's at, or if he's, but they did mention his name, and
Yeah, he's the,
and they've had
he's
some
on tax.
conversation. But I just want to make sure we're doing, we don't miss an opportunity here with something that could get funded potentially, or with a stoplight, because I know we're looking at that stoplight over there, potentially, what, on 74, that's coming, and I don't know, there could be, I just don't want to miss any opportunities, because we need whatever dollars we can get to help us go farther, because we have lots of needs, right, so.
Absolutely.
and can you let us know what we do submit as our project or projects?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, anything the town goes in for.
Because I think they always say the partnership ones rate higher, so.
They do, and I think on some of these, we have the potential to partner with Larimer County, perhaps Timnath, maybe even Fort Collins, potentially, depending on, what we do. Out there on crossroads, I don't know, there may be some other, Weld is part of that corridor as well as Larimer County, so, anyway.
I would suggest we also explore the possibility of, they have trail grants, I think, through the MPO, some
They can.
alternative. So, we have
Yeah.
lots of good trail projects and.
So the majority of the funds are gonna come from CMAQ funds, which have to do with us trying to control or eliminate congestion
Right.
mitigation. But some of these things you can kind of put
I thought they had a
towards that.
special alternative modal one that there's like 3 funds that they try to.
Yeah,
that they
well, the
can-
two for the call for projects, the 2 pots of money that have the most amount, there's about 9.8 million in CMAQ funds that are gonna be available, and about 8.4 million in what they call STBG funds. So we have to qualify for those projects, but again, that means we have to perhaps be a little bit creative in how we present these so that we do qualify for these projects.
Right, well, and it's just because it's so competitive, right? There's just,
Right.
every municipality around us has the same growth and the same issues in the transportation, so you do need to be aggressive and creative, I think.
Yeah.
It seems like the MPO though is traditionally kind of, the top projects kind of rise to the top regardless of, I think the people in this area have a good vision of the community and the whole region, so I don't think there's as much battle just for their project as much as, there seems to be a lot of collaboration and.
In the last, I would say 5 to 6 years,
Yes.
that is, yes. I think the MPO works very hard at wanting to make sure that we are all looking at things collaboratively and how we partner and work together instead of against each other. And I will just bring up another thing, just because I won't have time to go into lots and lots of detail, but there is a proposed Regulation 20, which is a Colorado low-emission automobile regulation developed under the executive order. It's probably one of the last orders out of Governor Hickenlooper's office that he presented in June 2018, which is going to require us, meaning Colorado, to adopt the California vehicle standards. Now, the MPO, there were some folks on the board who that didn't really sit too well with, especially because right now they're not, the rule, it does not necessarily have a direct benefit to air quality changes. So the question is, why are they wanting us to conform to the California? So we filed a brief in order to go and to make an appeal against this. Some of my fellow mayors are not going to join in the appeal because of their boards. Right now, I am on the appeal process, and I think it's important that we get in front of whoever we have to go and present this to, somebody at the state level. But the MPO is going to go on our behalf to represent this, to try to make a case as to why we would have to be under California's ruling. So,
And this is,
so if you want more information, let me know. And as we compile all this and our thoughts together, because what it will mean is it's going to mean automobile dealers in our area too are going to have to really watch their inventory, and they're going to have to allow for a lot more diversity in their let's just say in their product make and model, which my understanding is it's going to mean at least a $3,000 to $6,000 increase on vehicles that are non-electric or.
isn't it just fuel efficiency standards that are?
But it goes a little bit deeper when you dive deeper into that. And that's why some of the folks around the board, I think the majority of the board voted on Thursday night that we want to go and we want to, I guess, make some inquiries into this before it's passed.
And Mayor, I just ask if you get information, if you want to send that to me, and then I'll see that it goes out to the
I will
whole
do
board.
that.
Okay.
Because I know right now Suzette's putting because our answer has to be done tomorrow. So I would think all that's going to be put into place. But just so you know, it's very complicated. There's lots of moving pieces. So obviously I don't want to give an hour report on that tonight. But just if you have other concerns or want to know more, let me know. But I'll get everything to Shane.
Is that something we'll vote on, or?
I don't, none of the other boards that necessarily are voting on it. It's an MPO thing that's going to be voting on it.
But if some board members didn't join in this,
Yeah,
appeal.
they just, the only one that, Berthoud has opted to not be part of this, the request of all the other fellow, folks around the MPO that are, because right now it's simply making a request to have some additional questions answered about this.
Okay.
Because there's some concerns, because that means, because the thought was, well, then folks will just they'll just leave the state and go buy their vehicles. However, you have to have a vehicle, has to have 700, you have to have a vehicle in the state for 720 days then before you can register it. So it wouldn't be that easy to just go buy a vehicle across state lines, because you would, but you wouldn't be able to register it in your state, in Colorado for like 5 years.
Mayor, but what it sounds like is MPO as an organization has taken a position.
Yes, well, they didn't want to take an official yet. The position right now is to go through this brief process where we at least go before their board and try to get some more answers to what their requirement, what they're requiring of us at this point. And if you Google proposed regulation 20, make sure you put Colorado behind it, you'll get some information on it. November 12th, Town Hall closed. We have Veterans Day. Is that officially a Monday?
Yes, ma'am.
So one thing I would like to just put on your calendars, because we don't usually get that invite, but I have been attending for 8 years. Our high school does a wonderful Veterans Day ceremony, which is open, at least now that I'm going to say this, probably they may not do it this year, but they traditionally have a wonderful service around the noon hour, and the public is invited. And I would encourage anybody who's around to attend, because I think you will see a really good program and a day that makes you feel very proud to be part of Windsor and be able to give respect to the veterans on our community. So.
And Madam Mayor, I just want to add that I feel strongly about veterans and the service as well. So we're going to launch this year. Just thank you to anybody who works for the town of Windsor that's a veteran. And so we're going to just have a lunch for everybody on November 9th, which is a Friday prior to the holiday. So I will send out an invite to the board. We haven't picked a location yet because quite frankly, we've never tracked it. So we don't know how many veterans we have. But once we kind of figure out how many folks we have, we're going to do
What day is this gonna be?
It's Friday the 9th.
Oh.
So I think I put a note in my weekly update, and I'll continue to keep you guys engaged on that, and we'll make sure you get an invite once that's out.
Okay.
It says town hall's closed, does that mean we're not having any kind of work session or meeting or anything?
I hope so.
Okay, I just,
Everybody gets a day off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I'm just verifying, because it doesn't say no, meeting canceled or anything, it just says town hall's closed.
Okay, and then the 26th, we have another work session. We'll get an update from Rick Adcock about the RO plant. Is there anything else scheduled at
no.
this time?
Right now, I'm kind of waiting to see where the board decides to do on the October 29th, whether or not you want another work session, or if you'd rather just put that into November. So I'm trying to hold off on scheduling anything because I want to make sure we have the budget done and giving this as much time as we need. After I kind of know, we'll know after the 22nd where the board wants to go or what you want to do, and then staff can start looking at populating the rest of those times. So I think we have plenty to talk about. I just want to kind of reserve the budget right now.
Okay. And do we have any, so we don't have a date for the sign code update? That's a future meeting idea, topic? That's just a future meeting, but we don't have a date on that
That's right.
yet. Okay. Okay, and then the 25th of October, everybody got the invitation to the Weld County dinner. And you were supposed to bring a dessert, so I volunteered on behalf of Windsor to provide the
Your
dessert.
You just beat Mr. Sislowski, who offered to go to Mr. Yo's and buy a dozen donuts. So we were
2 dozen.
Yeah.
2 dozen.
Ooh, you're splurging.
Well, I'm not sharing, that's the key.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
so we have a little bit of a break before we come back to our meeting.